I just realised I was completely ill-equipped to do what I was doing.
When you started working with a coach then, because as you said, that was your turning point, how did things go from there? What are some of the things you changed?
One of the first things it did was just light some hope back for me, because I literally could not see any way out. And so it reignited some hope. I no longer felt alone. I think that's something that is really underestimated as a business owner, that how lonely it is, because no one truly understands until you're in that position.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Optimise Practice podcast. I'm your host today, Blake Sargent, and today I'm joined by Mr. Troy Parsons, owner of Optimise Health, the multi-seven-figure healthcare practice which now has over 30 team members and serves over around 3,000 patients a month. And he's also the founder of the Hive, and together we'll be discussing the confessions of a practice owner, and we're going to ask Troy for his 3 top tips of how he can help a practice owner. So Troy, tell me, things are good now, but take us back to how things were. Where did it all start? How were things at the beginning?
Hey buddy, well, we'll go back 20 years. Like literally, July just gone. I graduated as a pod, spent 4 years learning to be a pod, and basically went to this town to work in this practice, to eventually buy this practice, and then 3 or 4 years later. And so what I realised when the day approached, I got to buy this practice, that nothing changed except now I had a whole heap of responsibility, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I spent 4 years learning to be a pod, but I was arrogant enough to think that I could just figure out business. And I don't know about the people listening, but I wasn't taught about business at uni, unfortunately. I think that's actually a real problem. And so it's something that needs to change. So anyway, I just did the best I could, and pretty soon realised that no one was paying for my holidays anymore. So if I took a holiday, revenue stopped coming in. No one was paying my super or pension, and again, it was just responsibility just landed on me. I thought I was going to get tax efficiencies because we had I thought businesses got tax relief, but there's this thing called personal exertion here in Australia, where unless you have 4 team members, you're at still the max tax rate because you're the primary generator. So I went, righto, I need to grow. So I just basically hired my first guy, Sam, Christmas of that year, which is 20 years this year. He's still with us. Hired Sam, and it was just he and I and an admin. And then, basically started saying yes to opportunities. So the following year I hired Anne-Marie. That's 19 years ago, and she's still there. So, but over time I realised I didn't understand anything around systems. I didn't understand my numbers. I didn't understand anything about marketing. I didn't understand anything around IT or leadership or any of these things. And over time, I found that I was working harder and harder and not less. And I didn't seem to be making any more money than when I started. And so over time, I thought, well, right, I'm just going to get bigger. So I just said yes to more and more opportunities. The clinic's in a regional setting. And so they'd say, would you like to open a clinic here, which might be half an hour away? I go, yeah, I would. So I would drive and run that clinic. And you want to open one an hour away? Yep, we'll do that. And we just kept kind of growing at this stage where I might have had about 4 or 5 practitioners. And I was working harder than I did when I first bought it. I was working, nights, weekends. I was making less money than when I was first started. And, we were growing, but what I realized was I was just literally growing a tumor. I didn't know what I was doing. And it's really, I think the pressure of people now relying on me, I think I felt pretty hopeless and pretty useless, because no matter what I tried to do to try and improve cash flow or try and keep everyone happy, I was just failing. And like you've heard me talk about this before, but there was a day that I remember so vividly. It was a Saturday, and I was in my clinic, in my treatment room, sitting there with my with the pile of bills that were due. I was looking at gaps in the diary for the week ahead. I was looking at bank account and overdraft, and I had wages due. I remember sitting there and having tears kind of falling down my face, just going, how did this happen? This isn't how it's meant to be. No, it's really freaking tough. I remember that moment just going, I just don't think I'm cut out for this. I thought it'd be a lot easier. And it wasn't through lack of effort. There's so many things I tried. I don't know if I could have worked any more hours than I was. And, I couldn't walk away because it was so heavily dependent on me. There was nothing to sell because it was so heavily dependent on me. And I just had to try and figure a way out. And, I had a meeting with a mate that week, and I was explaining to him what was going on. And I was explaining it to him. And, again, I cracked, and, there were tears going down my face. And I remember him listening, and then this smile creasing his face. And I went, what are you smiling at? I'm broken, man. I'm literally broken. And he said, look, I think I know someone who could help you. And, I didn't know whether to laugh, hug him or punch him, but I went, yeah, I needed help. So, mate, how was it back then? It was hard, man. It was, I think the novelty of having my own business, where I thought I had more money, more time, more freedom, that evaporated really, really quick. And I just realised I was completely ill-equipped to do what I was doing.
When you started working with a coach then, because as you said, that was your turning point, how did things go from there? What are some of the things you changed?
One of the first things it did was just light some hope back for me, because I literally could not see any way out. And so it reignited some hope. I no longer felt alone. I think that's something that is really underestimated as a business owner, that how lonely it is, because no one truly understands until you're in that position. And so it was nice to have someone who I could talk to. And then, it was Greg, he helped me, understand and learn the things I wasn't taught at uni, which I should have been. He helped me understand, like numbers I need to focus on to understand how is the business going, what's working, what's not working. He helped me understand, the importance of systems. He understand the importance of, checking with my team. And, it helped shift me from this, staff and resentment to actually going, I need to get better and show up as a leader. I had no idea what that was. And so I think, so many things we covered, but I think if I was to distill it down, I would say, basically just to have someone that could help guide me and give me another point of view, and I was no longer alone. I think, the help and understanding of numbers, and not to be scared of numbers, which I was, to be honest with you. And then it was looking at how do you can I develop as a leader to nurture, team members and, ultimately create a culture. So I think that are probably the biggest things that I took from it, and something that still guides me today, to be honest with you.
Nice. Yeah, and then obviously a few years after that, it had a profound effect on you. Things started going well, because I know your story, and you founded the Hive to make sure that other practice owners didn't have to struggle in the way that you struggled. So tell us about the birth of that.
Well, before I even found this coach, Greg Gunther, I knew I needed help, and I was speaking to mates who had law firms and accountancy practice, etc. And they had coaches they could use, and consultants who understood their world and would help them go, okay, this is how you run this efficiently. This is how you get better at this. But I looked around healthcare and there wasn't anyone. And I went, and so when I started with Greg, he wasn't experienced in health. We just had to figure it out. And it wasn't just a linear path. The business journey isn't linear. It's up and down. And I went down a lot of dead ends, and you had to do a lot of U-turns and all the rest of it. And over time, I started to crack the code of what we need to do to make a allied healthcare practice work. And so I was then talking to colleagues of mine, other pods at that time, and they were having similar experiences to me. And some of them would never grow because they were too terrified to grow, because they just didn't know what to do. They needed complete control. They're too scared to let go. They're too scared to let someone else do things. No one could ever do anything as well as they could. And so I thought there's a huge need here. And I was on a rugby trip to World Cup New Zealand, and I got chatting to a guy called Andrew Roberts, who you know well, and he had experience in business coaching, and we just got talking, and he said, and I was talking about my journey, what I was doing. He said, look, what would you love to do? I said, I'd love to be able to help other people avoid what I've been through. And hopefully, the bumps, the bruises, the blood, the scrapes is something that can help others. And he said, well, why don't we do something about that? And that's where it started. So it started with a webinar. We got a huge amount of uptake, and what's that? 12, 13 years ago now.
Yeah, amazing. Obviously, in tandem to that, working with other practice owners, and like we work together, obviously, and I do the same here in the UK, and we've been going a long time. What were some of the things you changed about your model? Because there was a time where you grew to like 13 different sites, and it was like you say, you grew a tumor, and you'd sort of grown out of control. All you knew how to do was grow. So you then started to simplify things. And what are some of the things that the main changes you made to your model, or some of the things that you really felt worked for your model that mean that nowadays you have a much more controlled, sellable, scalable business?
I think an overarching premise is optimize before maximize. And so I thought the solution for me to have more money, more time, more freedom was just to keep getting bigger, which, I got to that stage where, we had 19 different sites. And so I literally kind of climbed this ladder to, success. I was up against this wall, and I got there and went, how do I get here? I don't want to be here. I want to be on that wall over there. And so we then look at, how can we simplify this? Da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think he's a smart dude, that guy. And I think there's probably something in that. So we slowly but surely kind of stripped it down. And it was with with a new coach and my current coach that I really dove deep on understanding numbers. And it was through understanding numbers where, what would happen historically, Blake, is like I would be working my backside off, trying to figure out how the clinic was going by the bank account, how I was going paying bills. And then once a year, the accountant would, do our financials, and I'd get like this report like 6 months after the end of the financial year, and I'd read through and go, oh, I made a profit. Great. How? And where is it? I couldn't understand. I've got a profit, but where is it? I don't have any cash. And so that's how I was running my business. So Paul helped me get really, really clear on what are the main numbers that we need to understand to help guide our business. Because I'm sure I wasn't alone. I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably listen to this who have this never-ending to-do list. And I constantly had this never-ending to-do list, and it just kept growing. No matter what I chopped off, it just get bigger again, because I never knew what was the most important thing. I never knew what I needed to do. And I also didn't understand that when we do certain actions, there's a lag before you start to get the results. And so I'm not doing these actions and I'm not seeing the results. So I think, right, I've got to do another thing. So I do another thing. And you can ask anyone who worked for me back in that time that I changed to another thing very quickly, just trying to find a way. And, I've forgotten how many things I tried to try and succeed. And so over time we went, right, we need to simplify down this as much as possible. We want to, reduce the risk. And so we basically consolidated down. We went from 19 back to 12 sites. And I remember actually looking, the next jump was to go from 12 sites back to 4. And I didn't do it because of fear. I was fear of, would disappoint people, we're providing a need. I had fear that we'd lose money, etc. But I think deep down I knew it was a bad business decision what I was doing. And then one day after I couldn't put it off any longer and I was stretching my team, I went, right, I've got to run the numbers on what is this actually making me? And I think back at that stage, those clinics were turning over about $228,000. And by the time I factored up, practitioner wages, a full admin to run these services, rent everywhere, vehicles, time not treating in travel, etc. I think I was making about $2,000, which means I'm making no money because there would have been stuff I hadn't even factored. And I went, look, we just can't do it for any longer. We need to, pull everything back in. And so we did that. We consolidated at our main practice in Toowoomba and the Warwick Clinic, and we haven't looked back. And so what we've done and what we do with our clients is basically going, rather than trying to get bigger, how do we do more with less? How do we optimize all the resources we have now? And by resources, I mean, the real estate you've got, the people you have, the equipment. How can you optimize that before we start to add more to it?
Yeah. And so I remember you also saying there was a point at where you doubled the turnover, but we're making less profit, which shows when we just try and get bigger that you go, hang on, like the turnover is a vanity metric and the profit is the sanity metric. And you go, hang on, I'm doing all this stuff but actually there's no profit at the end of, well, not as much profit at the end of the month. Whereas now, you've really simplified. How many rooms is the practice right now?
The trauma clinic is 15, and the Warwick one is 4.
Wow. Yeah. And so over 3,000 patients a month, or around that number. And what's next is the question. Who knows? Let's watch this space.
Yeah, well, it's not. It literally is. I think there's more optimization to do with what we're doing, and I think that's probably another topic for another day. But just to your point a second ago, though, Blake, like literally when I bought that practice, I think we were turning over $240,000 a year, and I can't remember what the net profit was right then. But when I got to $1 million, I was making turnover, which means I had to have a lot of people to generate that. Back here, I had 3. I was making less money at $1 million than I was at 240,000. And when I say less, making this money, like look at as in profit, and because it even goes further than that. You can have the revenue, which is a lovely vanity metric. Then you've got profit. But at the end of the day, it's the cash you keep, because even with profit, you've got to you might have repayments, you're going to have tax liabilities, and I can't buy you a beer with revenue. I can't buy you a beer with profit. I can buy it with cash. And that was something it took me a while to get. And I think even now, like when I talk with other practitioners, I really get lost in the distinction between the two, and that, at the end of the day, it's not what we build, it's what we keep. And there's many roads to get there.
Gotcha. And so just sort of to wrap up on this, you talked about in the very early days, the snapshot was started by treating loads. It was all about you, key person dependence. Then you bought the practice. Then it was even more about you, plus an additional job on top to make sure everyone gets paid, lead people, and run a business. And so that was key person dependent, and that lasted for a while till you've got something's got to change. Talk to us now about you yourself as a practice owner, and your, how dependent the practice is on you now.
I made a decision a long time ago that being a full-time clinician wasn't going to be where I wanted to end up. As I was going down the business journey, I was raised by people in business, and so I think it's DNA. And so as I was doing it, I realised that as a practitioner, I could help 15, 20 people a day. But when I had like a team of 5, you multiply that by 5. You have a team of 10, you multiply that by 10, and so on. And so over time, I went like, where is my passion here? And it's basically trying to help as many people as possible. So over time, I started to pull myself away from being a clinician. I haven't treated clinically since my son was born, and he's turning 12. And so I've spent that time now developing myself as a leader to help grow and develop my team, which then helps them with their patients, and then obviously through the Hive doing the same thing. And so my capacity at Optimise now, and the reason it's still there is because I love it, and I love my team, and we've got 9 people who've been there over 10 years, so it's pretty cool, it's pretty unique. And so I basically, I'm the visionary, like strategic direction. I'm in charge of one-on-ones with the practitioner team, and also with our practice manager. She's pretty much the general manager, really, working with her, and then sprinkle a bit of culture dust around the place. I watch the numbers. I just help guide, but I've set up to a point now where it's no longer dependent on me, and that was a conscious decision because I wanted people to be able to grow into it. And Tegan, who's the boss there now, I defer to her, and she just checks in with me if she needs to. She's 34, mum of 3 boys. I hired her as a 17-year-old, straight from school with no resume. And so that's the joy of the journey of a business owner, I think. And, the thing I hear so much about is when people talk about, everything's okay except for my staff. And I hear that, and I hear the negativity around it, and I can think back to when I felt in a similar way. But a little piece of me dies in that moment, because I just think the business journey is so much more than that, when you start to get it right, it's such a fulfilling thing. And so now I look at, how I can spend more time on the relationships. And, at the end of the day, mate, we're in the relationship business. relations with our patients, relations with our team, relations with our referrers and our community. So I think it's a pretty special thing, but it's just got to look at it through the right lens.
Yeah, nice. Great. Well, look, I'm sure we'll have you on many more times to give us some wisdom around running the healthcare practice, and we'll pick out some very specific topics so that these podcasts can be very useful for people, like actionable bits of content that actually come from a world-class healthcare practice, that when you pull back the curtain, they can then go and copy what you do and implement and get the same results. So just as a parting thought, in less than 60 seconds, if you were to give 3 tips and to sort of summarize 3 tips as to what a practice owner should be doing, what would they be?
All right. Number 1, get yourself a coach, get yourself a guide. Don't do it alone. I think it's crazy to do it. Find someone who's had the experience, has worked with other clinics to help guide you along the way. I think that's imperative. Number 2, know your numbers. Again, through your coach or through your own education, get to understand numbers and how they can be such a useful tool in a business to help you understand where you're winning, where you're losing, and how you can grow yourself and your team to help your patients get the outcomes that they're after. And thirdly, I think growing yourself as a leader. I think to develop yourself as a leader and as a person is absolutely imperative to run an effective and efficient and a happy business. And so I think if you were to stick with that, get yourself a coach. Don't do it alone. Know your numbers, and finally develop yourself as a leader, as a human. I think you'll be well on your way to having a wonderful practice and a wonderful life.
Amazing. Thanks so much. We'll have you on many more times, I'm sure. That's all for today's episode of the Optimise Practice podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe so that you don't miss the episodes that are coming up. Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you do want help building your practice, where we pull back the curtains and show you everything that Troy does in his practice, reach out to us at the Hive so we can help you build a profitable, stable and highly respected practice that can ultimately work without your daily input. So see you guys in the next episode.